Hello, so I'm going to be doing the pasta rocket experiment. First, what I'll be doing is using hydrogen peroxide, 3%. And I'm going to add it into this jar to about there. Okay. And now I'm going to add some yeast, about a teaspoon, as it's stated in the video. However, I'm going to have this seal ready to cover it up right away. Okay. And I'm going to push it down tight. Give it a shake. I'm going to put the noodle on top and light this noodle on fire, which will be, as you can see, pulling gas out of the noodle. And I don't know if you can see, but there's some smoke coming out. You can see the smoke coming out. And okay, so basically the Pasta Rock is a hybrid engine because it uses pasta, and pasta is a carb, and it uses that pasta carb as fuel and oxygen as the oxidizer. The pasta is a tubular type like ziti, like I used, and the oxygen source comes from the hydrogen peroxide that I used. The oxygen is liberated from the peroxide when the baking yeast, which contains an enzyme that would catalyze the production of O2, which is the oxygen. The hydrogen peroxide is a standard 3%, like I mentioned before, and that's something you can get at any drugstore. The 3% means for each millimeter of hydrogen peroxide that there'll be 3 millimeters of oxygen produced and generated. The production of O2 from hydrogen peroxide is exothermic, and it does become quite warm. So I guess it's like warm to the touch. The chemical equation involved in this experiment is 2H2O yielding 2H2O plus O2 gas. In general, catalysts work by providing a place where reactants can come together to react. Cells in yeast and other organisms contain a catalyst called catalase. And through normal cell processes, living things produce H2O2, which is the hydrogen peroxide, in the cells, but H2O2 is a poison, so the cells need a way to break it down very quickly. And since, like I mentioned before, cells contain catalase, which is an enzyme, it does break down the H2O2 at a pretty fast rate, as you can see from this experiment. And a single molecule of catalase can break down the millions of hydrogen peroxide molecules every second, which all goes back towards that the reaction equation like I mentioned before. So the catalyst being yeast, which was the yeast that I used active dry yeast, and however, it's not a part of the equation of hydrogen peroxide yielding water and oxygen. The yeast wasn't a part of that equation because it doesn't enter into the products. So that's why we don't use it in the equation, because it never enters into the products. So when the yeast overall, with this experiment, when the yeast was mixed with the hydrogen peroxide, it started the reaction almost immediately when I shook it together. And the seal from the mason jar, when I pushed it down, the seal allowed for the reaction to stay inside and build up pressure. in order for when I lit the pasta on fire, it allowed that smoke to come out, as you saw. So anyway, this was the pasta rocket experiment, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.